Namaste and welcome to another teaching for self-realization. So let us begin. Let us connect more deeply with ourselves, with our breathing for a few seconds. And let us begin. We are the self. There is just one self. There are many bodies, many worlds, many universes, many planets, many races, many species, many souls, many spirits, but there is only one self, and you are that self. You are the all-pervading, transcending self. We call the self the Christ, the Buddha mind, the Tao, God, consciousness, awareness. We call ourselves with many names, but you don't need a name. Your name, your body, your experience, your life needs a name. You don't need a name. You can live without a name, right? So it doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you have form, if you have shape, because we say, okay, the self is formless, the self is eternal, the self is God, the self is all-pervading, the self is like that and like this. The word is not the self, is made of the self. Consciousness is not the self. So we kind of get stuck in these thoughts, these ideas, you know. Some are true and some are needed at the beginning, we can say. Not needed, but they can help, you know, to know that you are God, you are consciousness, you are beyond the body, and so on and so forth. But in reality, you don't need nothing, okay? You don't need to understand how you are, what you are. You don't need to understand how the world appeared, how the universe appeared, what created the Big Bang. You don't need to know if you are consciousness, if you are beyond consciousness, if your self is only one self, if there are two selves, because in the spiritual path and on the spiritual, in our spiritual practices, we tend to put a lot of questions like, who am I? What am I? You know, how does self appear? Is the self everything? It's something? Is the creation the self? You know, is the universe made of the self? Who created the universe? It was a desire of the self, or it just appeared, or it always was? So we have a lot of questions about the self, you know. I speak about questions related to the self. There are endless questions about the self, endless questions, and you can get stuck in that questions. You say you can see that every apprentice, every uh, searcher, every practitioner goes to the master and puts him a lot of questions, you know, like, who am I, what am I me? And at some time the master said, stop with the questions. This only brings more questions. You don't need questions. You don't need anything, you know. So this is what I'm speaking about. You don't need to understand how the universe functions. You don't need to understand how the universe was created, how the self is related to creation. You don't need to understand how is the self, what qualities have the self, if he has any qualities, if it's dying, if it's... You don't need to know nothing about the self or questions or information related to the self. You just don't need it because you already exist. You already are what you are. You don't need anything. Okay, there can be questions. You can ask, okay, how the creation appeared? Did the self created from a desire? Did the creation is a, a movement in the eternity? What is creation? How is the self created? You can know that on the mental level, on an information level. It maybe can help you understand more about yourself, the world. You can understand, you can have a lot of information about the self, endless information. Now, right now, I can create like many questions, like, okay, how creation appeared if the self is eternal? When did creation appear? I can ask why I don't feel the self, I'm the self every time. You can ask, is the self in creation or is beyond creation? So you can ask infinite questions about the self. You know, if you have eternity, you can ask, you can create question and ask question about the self. But that is not important. You don't need to understand. You don't need information. You don't need identification. You don't need names like God, Purusha, Brahma, Buddha, mind. You don't need names. You don't need anything. You are the self. You always have been, you always will be the self. It doesn't matter what you know about the self. It doesn't matter what you understand about the self. It doesn't matter what you add to yourself. Only thing that matters is that you are the self. And in this knowing that you are the self, you are yourself, you are living, you are life. In this knowing, in this realization, you will know yourself. You will be one with yourself. You will understand everything and you will know self-realization. This is self-realization. Self-realization is to know that you are already the self. That's it. That's it. Just to know that you are the self. You are your own self. It doesn't matter what you are. When you come in contact with what you are, you get trapped. Why do you need to know what you are? Why do you need to know who you are? In the sense that, am I like this? Am I like that? To know yourself. You don't need this question and answers. You only need to realize that you are the self. Right now. Nothing. You you don't need nothing to change, to understand. You don't need nothing to find out. You don't need nothing to search for. You don't need anything. You are that. You are yourself. If you have questions about the self, it's okay. But the questions, the questions is for information, for understanding, for your mind. You don't need questions. That is the truth. That is self-realization. When you realize that you don't need nothing, that you already are what you are, you already exist. That is self-realization. So understand this now. Realize this right now. Now tomorrow, you don't need to answer your list of questions. You don't need to find a master. You don't need to go to India. You don't need to meditate. You don't need nothing. You are the self. It's simple like that. It's just so simple that so many beings miss it every day because they want to find questions, to answers, to read books, and so on. And it's okay. It's okay. It can lead you to that. But you don't need it. You don't need anything. You don't need anything. So, practice this. If you want to practice something, practice this. Don't just listen to me. Don't just hear this video and try to understand. Just put whatever I'm saying into your life, into your practice, into your sadhana, into your daily life. This understanding, this simple understanding that you are already the self and you don't need anything. You don't need to change, you don't need to evolve, you don't need to search, you don't need to understand, you don't need to find questions, to answer questions. Just practice this in your life and see what happens. Don't just listen. Do what I tell you. Try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Maybe for some will work, maybe for others will don't work, maybe for nobody will work. You know, maybe I'm mistaken, but you have to see, you have to put it into practice, not just theory. You already know you are the self, you are consciousness. I told you in so many videos, but you don't need that. You don't need that. Practice this. Practice. I am the self. It doesn't matter how I am, what I am. I'm already here. I'm already me. Nothing to achieve, nothing to change, nothing to fight for, nothing to strive for. I'm already the self. There's nothing I can do or not do to change that. Just understand this, practice this, and see what will happen. See what will happen. Stop with the questions, stop with the searching, stop with the reading, stop with the meditations, and just embrace yourself, just accept yourself, just be with yourself, just be yourself. And you don't need to try to be yourself, you already are. You just need to let it happen, to let it, accept it, accept that you are the self, because you say, I'm not the self, I'm not there yet. I think I need something, I feel something is missing, whatever. This is not accepting who you are. You don't accept who you are, what you are. You don't need that. You don't accept it like it is. You don't accept yourself like you are. you need that, or you need this, or you need this, or you need a little more time, or you need a bit little different decor, but you postponed it, and it can take years or lifetimes. So right here, right now, accept yourself as you are, unconditionally. Don't change nothing. Don't change anything. And practice this and see what happens. Practice this. Thank you and see you next time. Thank you.